Hello, everybody. Just wanted to get together and talk travel. We love talking travel, and it is one of the most hot topics out there. But at the same time, not a lot of people know the details and the nuances and how to make your trip as best as it can be. And Reiner Marks is joining us from Viking. Why, Reiner? Because river cruising has never been more popular. But at the same time, it's kind of a unique way of traveling. And I thought you and I could just sit down and chat a little bit today, maybe dispel some rumors, add a little color commentary to make somebody think, hey, if I want to go on a river cruise, how can I maximize this trip? So thanks for joining us. I'm glad you're on the call today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Most people have at least an idea of what an ocean cruise looks like. I mean, a lot of people have been on ocean cruises or they've at least heard about it. If I was an ocean cruiser, Reiner, kind of walk me through what's going to be unique about river cruising from that ocean cruiser's perspective.
Well, Ryan, it is basically cruising with way less passengers than you are used to on oceans. There's only 190 passengers. On some of the smaller rivers, it's 120. Or if you go into the exotics, you're looking at 80, 60 guests. Much more up close, personal, more intimate type of cruising. A little limited in space when it comes to public areas, so you don't necessarily have the many dining venues. However, it is a very social event. You get to know your fellow travelers, which is always wonderful to meet people from all over the world.
I like the idea of river cruising for really, it started with the number one thing you said. Some of those new cruises that are on the ocean that are getting all the publicity, and Royal Caribbean's come out with a few that have about 6,000 passengers. So to be traveling with closer to 190, you do have to think in your mind, right? Everything is a little smaller. Not that you're compromising on space
Mhm.
to a certain degree, but at the same time, everything's smaller. So it's a much more informal, it's less chaotic getting on and off the ship. I know this having been a river cruiser myself. So that 190 is just such a nice number where
Mhm.
there's enough people. You're not traveling with just a couple, so you have more people to get to know than just a handful of people. But it's just not that 6,000 number that the big ships are really gravitating towards now. So if I were to think though about the pricing, because when a lot of people ask me when they talk about river cruising, they want to know, right? What's the value proposition of a river cruise? They have an idea, again, what's on the ocean, but river cruising slightly different, and some of the things you're going to do on ship are completely different. So, can you kind of walk me through that value proposition, inclusive of what I pay for and what do I get, but maybe also wrap in some of the experiential things?
Absolutely, Ryan. It is a very inclusive kind of a product, right? You're used to paying for a lot of these small things like cookies and cake and tea time and scoops of ice cream on oceans, where these are definitely included, such as your shore excursion, your daily shore excursion. All the meals on board are included. It is, it covers your wine and beer with lunch and dinner, even bottled water on excursions in your cabin. So a lot of these things, like I said, on oceans that guests have been used to paying for, you don't have that necessarily. What's wonderful is it's the tea time, these kind of things, coffees, specialty coffees, your lattes, macchiatos, and espressos, and all of these things are included any time of day. Really amazing since a lot of our guests use their phones, use their tablet computers. They bring those to their trips. Wi-Fi is included, and it's not only for a couple of 100 minutes. It is really for the duration of the entire cruise, and it works very, very nice. All these ships are equipped with Starlink. It works very, very well. Um, the infotainment system. Let's not forget about that. All of that in every cabin, port charges, taxes, government fees. You don't pay for those. So it is a fresh breeze not having to pay for all of these little things. It's very much appreciated. And I think this is probably the no nickel and diming approach is probably one of the big uh, things that drove guests in the early years of river cruising from oceans to rivers to really try this wonderful new product.
Yeah, I like the thought process that it's pretty close to all inclusive, as you
Mhm.
mentioned. Your all your meals are taken care of. How many restaurants typically on a river vessel would you have an option to choose from?
So you have multiple dining venues. They all be served out of the same a galley, if you will, but there's lighter menu options. Let's just say you have your main dining room with your sit-down dinner. A majority of the guests choose to dine there, but there's a beautiful Aquavit Terrace, the Aquavit Lounge, where there's a, let's just say, a lunch buffet with carving station, and oftentimes we grill even out on the Aquavit. So there's additional options to choose from, because most guests that go out for for a day trip, for an excursion, they maybe have just a light lunch, a sandwich, a soup, a little carving, a little sausage meal, or those kind of things. And that is definitely a great option to have in the lounge as well. So really, don't imagine that everybody goes into the dining room. There's many areas on the ship to enjoy your meals. Even for dinner, you have a lot of guests that enjoy al fresco dining for dinner, especially now in the summertime, where you can easily do that. And don't forget about the views from that al fresco dining spot. This is incredible. To sail into Budapest and dine, surrounded by millions of city lights is incredible.
Yeah, you've really described, I think, when I think of river, a
Mhm.
stress-free experience. And so if you're an ocean cruiser and you're trying river for the first time, you don't need to worry about, am I on the first dining or the second seating dining? Or what if I don't have my reservations? Or I want to get into the specialty dining restaurant, and what is that going to cost me? Guess what? There's plenty of seating. You don't never have to worry about stressing, do I have my dining reservations for the entirety of the trip scheduled? You will find an open seat somewhere on the ship in the multiple venues. You don't pay for the a specialty. There is no upcharge specialty restaurant, as Reiner pointed out. So to me, it's really a relaxing, stress-free experience. You have less passengers to deal with. You don't have to worry about, oh my gosh, on the third night of the ship, we don't have a dining reservation. What are we going to do, honey? Your wife and you don't need to stress about it. There will be plenty of options of great food, light fare, heavy fare, plenty of options on a Viking river ship in this case. You touched on some of the inclusiveness, and one of the main things people, I believe, love about river cruising is the excursion options, but because they're included. This isn't something that, and you know this, on some of those ocean cruise lines, there's an expensive ticket that you have to pay to get that special excursion experience in each and every port. Walk me through what an excursion experience looks like on Viking because they're included.
Absolutely. So you have to view it like this. We bring you to a new city, you get into the town, and your daily excursion every single day is included, like you said. It starts, everybody of these 190 passengers, the majority of them walk off the ship leisurely within 10 minutes. The ship is basically on board, on land. And we're following our guides, and we avoid groups larger than 25, maybe 30 guests to one guide. And they all wear their AudioVox headsets, so that you get a live commentary as you're walking the city, and every guest has their own receiver. And they work at about 100 yards away, so you don't have to have your head in a huddle. So all local guides that tell you about their hometown. So what we're doing on all of our excursions, we're kind of breaking them up in three different tiers, right? So they're themed differently. You have your working world excursions, where we might go into a vineyard or into a bakery, learn about the local economy, the history, and those kind of things. Privileged access excursions, they take you behind the scenes. For example, renowned museums of the world like the Louvre or the Sistine Chapel, where we go after hours, right? This is something you can't necessarily book somewhere just off the rack. These are, with the buying power of Viking, with the wonderful relations we have in the destination, we really go behind the scenes after hours. And the last thing we want is, of course, people standing in line. So always frontline access. So there comes a lot of privileges that we give our guests and provide our guests. And then, of course, local life, right? We learn about the locals. We meet the locals. That's very important, right? It's oftentimes a challenge to meet locals that share their experiences, their upbringing, especially when we sail behind the Iron Curtain, the former Iron Curtain, into the Eastern countries, right? Where we organize meetings with local families, oftentimes even go into their homes in smaller groups and learn about their experiences, what it meant back in those days. So there is, of course, specialty interest tours in the afternoons. Those are optional. Like you mentioned, somebody might be interested in how a Mercedes-Benz is assembled. So there's There's tours that go in the factories where you learn how these are being put together. And those are for a fee. You book them ahead of time, but always your daily shore excursion is always included. And normally they leave right around 8:39, 8:45 in the morning, right after breakfast, and they return somewhat 12:30, 1 o'clock back on the ship for lunch.
You've described what I really love about river cruising. It's culturally immersive.
Mhm.
It allows you to learn about the destination. So there's always an educational component to a certain degree with Viking that's trying to teach you about the people, the places, the culture, what drove the economy there for hundreds, if not thousands of years in some of these destinations. And you guys are able to do it on the river because you dock in the heart of many of these small villages and towns and in places that are not found on an ocean cruise map, right? Because you're inland. And in most cases, it's either a short motor coach ride or you're walking to the destination. And that's what's special, I think, about river is rarely do you find, unless it's something super unique and special that requires a venture, rarely are you going to be sitting on a motor coach for a long, long time to get somewhere because you're right in the heart of the country or the destination where these rivers are the true waterways. They're the old expressways of yesteryear, and history really comes alive because of that central nature of where you're at on the cruise. You're getting me more excited again, and I've been on river cruises and I really want to go. So hopefully, people that are listening are recognizing how exciting a river cruise can be. Okay, but which river? Where do I start? Like there's got to be some unique things that come with the different rivers. I'd love for you to kind of walk me through. Let's start here. I've never been on a river cruise, Reiner. Where would Reiner recommend I take my first river cruise?
That is an easy one, Ryan. For many, many years, we're doing this for 27 years. River cruising was put on the map by Viking. And one of the first river cruises that we put on the map was the Rhine Getaway. This is a cruise that is an 8-day journey between Amsterdam and Basel, Switzerland, single-handedly the most popular tour among first-time travelers on Viking on the rivers. And the reason I think is because you really, in these 8 days compacted, you get a great idea of 4 different countries. You're starting your journey. If you go from north to south, you're starting your journey in the Netherlands, right? Spend some time there, learn about all these wonderful ports there, and then sail into Germany, get a great idea of the German food culture, the music, Beethoven along the Rhine, before touching on ports in France, Strasbourg, right? This amazing cultural capital in the Alsace, learning about different wines that are absolutely breathtakingly amazing, right? Wonderful food along the way, wherever you stop. And then ending your cruise in Basel. And if you want to even extend a little further, you may even go down to Lake Como, spend another 3 days, and add a fifth country to your collection. So you can say you've been in Italy, which you have, right? So um, this is really a lot of bang for your buck, if you want to put it like that, compacted in just 8 days. And this is really where many people catch the river cruise bug, get really, I don't want to say addicted, but really get a flavor for what it means to sail on a river. The luxury, the everything is taken care of. People speak your language. It's a vacation in a foreign country, but everybody caters to your needs, and you really have to worry about nothing, right? Everything is there for you.
Yeah, the Rhine is a great start. I love that you talked about it. I don't want to diminish it, but it's almost like the sampler plate of river cruising because, like you said, you get multiple countries with all of the local cuisine as you sail through the different countries. But when I think of the Rhine, I think of it's like a castle around every corner. As you're sailing on the river, and you've got the forests of Germany, you've got the beautiful town of Strasbourg, as you mentioned in France, and if you love France and you haven't gotten out of Paris, boy, Strasbourg might be, I don't want to say it's a hidden gem because so many people know about it, but it should be on your list. So as I think of the first river cruise, that's a great experience is to experience the Rhine. There's a bunch of other options, and most of I would say the river cruise number of beds, right? The most number of beds are in Europe. So you've got the Rhine, the Danube, the Rhone, the Seine, the Douro. Now you're starting to get a little bit of a different experience on each of those because as you head down the Rhine and the Danube, it's almost a continuation. It's new and unique. You see, my backdrop is obviously Budapest, so that's on the Danube. So you have a little bit slightly different views and slightly different cuisine. But maybe give me some other thought processes on these different regions. Like what's going to be different on the Douro from the Rhine and the Danube, and then take me out of Europe after you talk about that, and give me some other like maybe exotic places I never even thought about traveling to by way of river.
Absolutely. I'm glad you're asking. This is almost like the way I personally look at it. People kind of graduate to those more exotic places. And I don't want to say the Douro is exotic. It is a European river, but it's much smaller. So the ships here are much smaller, 120 guests only. The approach is still culture, music, history, the great food, the beautiful wines. When you talk about Portugal, of course, we're starting and ending the journey in Porto, which is the capital of port winemaking, but more so even for the Vinho Verde, right? These beautiful, absolute fresh and amazing wines. Um, so we're while we're sailing up there, we're stopping in different ports on the way up. It's basically a round trip. You're starting in Porto, sailing all the way up to uh, um, Salamanca in Spain, where we then turn around and do different ports on the way back down to Porto to get a great idea. You learn about the beautiful flamenco, not flamenco, the fado. Fado is flamenco is Spain. The fado is the music and the dance of Portugal. You learn about the incredible cuisine as you maybe experience a day at a bakery where they bake the traditional breads. I think Portugal, I feel, is one of the capitals of bread making in Europe, right? You get a great idea. The variety is just overwhelming. And as we sample our way basically through the cuisine of Portugal, we're making our way back to Porto, where then in the end you might even want to spend some time at the famous pilgrimage space, which slipped my mind now. um, Santiago de Compostela. That's the one. Santiago de Compostela, which is absolutely incredible. It has to be seen. So this is just one of the many extensions that you can take here in Porto. But boy, what an incredible experience. Also, you mentioned the exotics, and of course, we have to talk about Southeast Asia, right, where you can take a journey starting in Vietnam, crossing over into Cambodia, sailing the beautiful Mekong River, which is an incredible journey and a different type of history here, right? You're talking thousands years back, but also looking at the Vietnam War, the Hanoi Hilton. So there's a lot of things to be learned about ancient history and recent history. But the culture is absolutely amazing. The cuisine is so rich and colorful as we go to the markets. Again, the ship is very, very small. It's only 80 passengers, but absolutely luxurious. And this is maybe something where a traveler kind of graduates to after they've experienced European rivers, maybe done, a lot of these ones, and then sail to places a little further away, such as the Mekong. Secondly, I wanted to mention the Nile River. We're offering the cruises in Egypt, where you spend a couple days in Cairo, learn about the ancient Egyptian history, and then an inland flight will bring you to Luxor, where you sail down the Nile River, which is absolutely stunning. The Valley of the Kings, Luxor, all these ancient temples. And with us sail at Egyptologists that are incredibly educated. They're professors, they're educators on local universities, and they have a wealth of knowledge that is absolutely stunning. So Egypt becoming much more popular these days. We never stopped sailing there in recent years, so it is a very, very strong leg for Viking to stand up with many ships. We're having 6 ships now in Egypt, and we're planning to build more because of the demand that we're seeing there. So it's absolutely stunning. I have been, and I'm planning to go back as soon as I can. It was absolutely incredible.
Yeah, as many people travel the world, sometimes they're a little anxious or nervous about going to some of these exotic destinations because of the language barrier, the culture is maybe not westernized. How will they be able to see and experience the destination like you would want to with immersive,
Mhm.
authentic experiences. And that's one of the things I really am glad you touched on, to do it by way of the river with a cruise company like Viking, who you've been established there, you have the contacts and the relationships. So it should, again, be a hassle-free, relaxing trip for you, because you shouldn't worry about, well, I know the directions. How am I going to get around? Where do I go? What do I say when I get there? Viking's got it all taken care of for you because of the same pillars that you would find on a river cruise in Europe, from cultural immersive, included excursions that they've vetted out and know where to go and when to be there. The same can be said in Egypt. The same can be said on the Mekong, in Vietnam and Cambodia. So I love the idea of, it's exotic by title, but it's not that big of a leap for a traveler to go with Viking River Cruises to these destinations. It's still going to be hassle free. It's still going to be taken care of.
Absolutely true. We take care of everything. Your travel advisor with Bon Voyage will assist you through the process. And they work very closely with us, on visas, on any from air to transfers to the hotel, from the hotel to the ship. It's all taken care of. It's one-stop shop. Like you said, we take care of all of the details. You don't have to worry about a thing. The guest just shows up and enjoys and learns and samples their way through this beautiful country.
Yeah, and you've mentioned that the first time river cruiser typically starts on the Rhine. They
Mhm.
graduate to a certain degree to these other destinations, which, by the way, you don't have to follow the path. If Egypt is on your mind and you've never taken a river cruise, do it. Like, don't feel like, well, I have to do the Rhine first to understand it. That we're just giving an idea, right, of kind of the
Right.
pathway. But that's, I think, the beauty of river cruising is it's not just there's destination unique features, but there's also can be the same destination seen in a different way, because I know Viking taps into some different themes. You've touched on one of them, which is wine cruises, and it could be port wine in Portugal. It could be some great Chardonnays in the Rhineland, then lots of other options in Bordeaux. So you've got lots of different themes starting with wine, but then maybe some Christmas markets and some other things that might draw some people out. Walk me through some of the different themed options you have.
See, this is all along the lines of what Viking is doing. All of these things that we're talking about, whether it's wine, whether it's the history themed cruises like the D-Day cruises in France, right? This would be one that I would like to name. Or the wine themed cruises that take you anywhere along the Rhine River, because that is one of the major wine growing regions in Germany, in France, the Moselle, the Danube. It's so deeply ingrained into the local culture that you almost don't need to do a specialty tour, because every tour that we do will touch in the working world excursions on winemaking, on sampling, on tasting. Even on the ship, it translates over to what we're doing on the ship, where we do the themed dinners. You have the same cuisine. You sail through the Wachau region. Of course, you're going to drink the Blaue Zweigelwein, the Grüner Veltliner wines that pair wonderfully with the local food that we're serving there on board. And you have so many choices. So we're bringing the culture to you and surround you with it, not only ashore, also on board. And of course, wine is such a strong and important part of life anywhere we go, right? You have absolutely fantastic wines in France. One of my all-time favorite cruise is the Chateaus, Rivers, and Wine in Bordeaux, where one of the most renowned wine regions, right? You're finding yourself at a picnic in the vineyards of Chateau Mouton Rothschild, of Margaux. You're walking the village of Libourne, this is the holy grail for any wine enthusiast, and you're sampling the amazing food. You're learning how truffles being located and found by a local expert. I mean, these type of experiences, I don't want to even call them, excursions. These are true experiences. You sit on a boat in the Bay of Arcachon while the fishermen pull out the oysters right in front of you, an opening, and you sample them with the beautiful local wine. It's just second to none, right? I caught the riverbuck many years ago, and I've never gotten over it.
I can tell, and you touched on some great wine stuff. I mentioned the Christmas markets, again,
Oh, yes.
seasonality, right? November and
Yes.
December. The normal season for a European river cruise is kind of expanded, Reiner, but correct me
Hmm.
if I'm wrong. Really, the normal season is kind of April through October. There's some March sailings that are starting to come out, but that's really when the destination comes alive. That's when the temperatures are such where it's much more uh, appropriate for you to be out and about in Europe during that April to October time. But if you want the true Christmas market feeling, boy, there's nothing better than sailing on the Rhine or the Danube specifically and hitting either the German or Austrian or Hungarian Christmas markets along the way. I can smell the Christmas smells and the mulled wine that's going to fill you up and warm you from the inside. And trust me, you'll need it because it is cold. But the Christmas markets is definitely something to look at. Let's zero in real quickly, though, on Viking. Let's talk about Viking specifically. Why you guys are really the leaders. You have the most boats out there for a reason, river vessels, because people love what you guys do. And it's not just, well, we do it all. That's actually not true. You don't cater to everybody and do everything. I love hearing from you when you actually phrase it as this: what Viking is not, dot, dot, dot. Like, fill me in. What is Viking not? Because there's some people on here that might think, wow, why are you selling it in this way? But after they hear you present and talk about it, I think that it'll make a lot more sense.
It sure does. So I'm glad you're touching on this. There's subtle differences. Every tour operator works differently. And long, long time ago, we learned that our guests on board are really in their 50s, 60s, 70s. So we really focused on that kind of clientele. You will not find any children under 18 on Viking. So there will be no children on board. You have to be 18 or older. There's no casinos. The Viking traveler is somebody who goes out, explores, and learns and puts themselves out. So there's really no space to spend time in a casino on board. Now, there is amazing casinos in Monte Carlo, in Baden-Baden, in Germany. That, of course, these are beautiful buildings and they have to be seen. They're part of the cultural heritage. Of course, we're going to visit there, but it's not the main focus. So no casinos on board. We don't do any like art auctions, those kind of things. You don't find that on board. It's really not the type of entertainment or the shopping driven kind of infotainment on board. We don't do that. No charges. You touched on that. For beer and wine with lunch and dinner, these are included. Your sodas, your soft drinks are included. Alternative dining. Again, that is something that went a long way. People really enjoy tasting and sampling their way through the meal offerings on board and not having to pay extra anywhere on board, right? The Wi-Fi is included. We do not charge for that. Um, so there is no inside staterooms. That's another big advantage of river cruising, that every cabin has a view, whether it's a window, whether it's a sliding door, which we call a French balcony, or your veranda staterooms where you have, similar than on an ocean, you have a beautiful cabin with a walkout uh, veranda there, or even the suites, the larger cabins on board, the Explorer suites are absolutely stunning, right? We don't allow smoking on board. That is just something that I think more people appreciate than not. Smoking is not something we do. No waiting in lines, and we don't do formal nights. Viking is modern luxury, right? We're contemporary, we're modern. We don't ask for suit and tie and cocktail dress and changing multiple times throughout the day. We're modern luxury, the way you would go to your country club, maybe in the evening, a button down shirt, slacks, if you're perfectly dressed for the day. Uh, Another important item, we don't have butlers on board. It is a upscale, contemporary feel on board. We don't promote any white glove service. We don't aim to intimidate. I think it boils it down when you go in the dining room and you sit down at your beautifully decorated table and all of that. You're not intimidated by, 7 forks, 15 knives, and 12 glasses. We don't do that. It is contemporary, it's modern. With every dish that is outside of the ordinary, we bring the silverware. Again, it's not to intimidate our guests. And most important, that I always make sure that our guests understand, is that we don't nickel and dime. That is really the most important thing, that I want clients to understand Viking does not stand for nickel and diming. And those are just some of the things that we did. The list goes on and on and on, but I want to leave it at that. These are really the main differences that I wanted to touch on.
You painted a great picture of what life is like on board beyond just all the wonderful things that you mentioned, from food to the staterooms are beautifully appointed, etc. But I love hearing about what you're not, because some people don't think about these things until they're on board. And if you're on an ocean vessel, you are right. There's a lot of nickel and diming, and you don't realize it till you're there. And I'd love that you put this out front so that you really know what you're not going to have to worry about, or again, the hassle-free experience. Now, take me to the next step, right? I'm starting to plan, right? If I'm a listener here, I'm getting excited. You've painted the great picture of on board. Can I? Does Viking have opportunities to extend my trip? If I wanted to do something a little bit before, you talked about maybe a little bit afterwards on some of your discussions when we got into the destination specific itineraries. Walk me through the pre or post. Does Viking have some options to extend on land if I wanted to do something extra?
Yes, we do, and I'm glad you're asking, Ryan. So, what I always recommend, you're doing this long journey overseas, you just spend 10, 12 hours at times on an airplane to get into the destination. You're going to be jet lagged, right? My advice is take one of these extensions that Viking is offering, and there's multiple in each port, whether you start in Amsterdam on the Rhine or the opposite direction in Basel, Switzerland, right? You have extensions that take you into the heart of town. Basically, the way you want to understand it, most of the extensions we offer is a luxurious hotel in the heart of town, close to all the highlights, the sites. There is a concierge, a Viking concierge on site in the hotel that can help you with travel planning, with your day trips, with providing maps and insights on restaurants nearby, those kind of things. But it is exploring the city on your own, right? There is some excursions in some places that we offer, maybe where we need transportation to get into a nearby, local highlight. These would be included in the extension, but most of them, like I mentioned, are a hotel in the heart of town at a price that you cannot find on your own, right? That's important too. So you get over the jet lag, you do a lot of walking, and then when your day of the cruise comes after 3 days, 4, sometimes 5 days, you are ready to really enjoy your cruise. You'll be alert. You have adjusted to the new time zone, and the beautiful thing is when you do the Viking Air, your transfers are included again. There's nothing for you to worry about. Your local concierge in the hotel will get you the information when the transfers from the hotel to the ship take place. It is seamless, right? It is absolutely a one kind of stop shop with Viking, just to say like that. It is hassle free, like you said. I like that. Hassle free is good.
It really is shaping up to be that way. And when I think, okay, we're continuing here. You've been inspirational. You're now starting to narrow down, hopefully, which river, what theme, or what time of year maybe I want to go on. Let's touch on the time of year and some of those other like weird things about cruising that people have in your mind. First of all, I'm going to throw this one thing out. It might sound silly to say it, but I get the question all the time. There are no sea days on a river cruise. There is no worry about seasickness. As silly as that sounds, as somebody who's been on a river cruise, a lot of people are trepidatious about, oh, a cruise, I get seasick. You will always see land on a river cruise. You will be tied up every day. Multiple times a day. Your cruising is going to be at a very slow pace. So you don't have to worry about the ship flying down the river and having to wear your seatbelt to buckle up. So let's start there. But what are some of the things, and I'll touch on that, something that might sound a little challenging, high and low water. What does that
Ah,
mean? So give me the walk me through again. I don't know if I don't know about river cruising, and I've heard maybe some friends say, "Oh, high water, low water. No, the best time of year is to always go on in this month or that month." Kind of dispel some of those rumors or those negative connotations that might be out there.
no, I'm glad you're asking. So high water and low water is something that really is unpredictable. There is no specific
Yeah.
month of the year that we can expect that. And we've been watching and monitoring the rivers all over the world for years. and have looked at weather station and weather data. There's no rhyme or reason. There's no pattern. However, high and low water, is been a topic in all the chat logs and all the websites and communication. So to just kind of put things in perspective, it's about 4% of all the cruises worldwide on rivers are only affected by high and low water. And we haven't talked about that yet. Viking really has a great system to counter that. Nobody is a fan of bus tours. Nobody wants to be bussed around having booked a cruise. It should be a cruise from point A to Z. So I haven't mentioned yet that all of our river ships are absolutely identical. And that comes very, very handy when we do what we call a ship swap. You have to imagine that on every day of the week, a ship leaves, especially on the Rhine, where we see a lot of demand, leaves from Amsterdam headed south, and another ship heads from south, from Basel, headed north. Now, these ships are scheduled to meet at a specific area on the river on each sailing. And you have these sailings going every direction. Now, if we come to the point where you have a high or low water situation, we bring these ships close to each other, as close as we can, to the point where there's no way we can pass that. High water would mean we are stuck near a bridge that we can't get under, or low water, we would scrape ground. Nobody likes that. In any case, your half-day excursion on both ships, let's just pick the example of Heidelberg, we'll turn this into a full-day excursion. We're spending on both ships, we do the full-day excursion. We'll leave the ship in the morning, just like we do every day. We have asked our guests to pack their suitcases and leave them in the cabin and go on a wonderful full-day excursion in the city of Heidelberg, in this case. And we explore much more than we would have on that half day, right? We have lunch in town. We have much more time in town. Time on your own to go some shopping, get yourself a new cuckoo clock. But in the same time as our excursions are on board, we clean and prepare the ships on both ends, transfer the suitcases from one ship to another. Your program director will join you when you then, instead of coming back through your first ship, you're now coming to the new ship, and you have a welcome dinner, a welcome reception. You meet your new crew. The ships will then turn around, each one, and turn and sail in opposite directions. That way, such a situation would affect one day of your journey. The last thing we want is this to become a bus tour of Europe. It continues to be a cruise, just on a new ship. The ships are absolutely identical. You are in cabin 200 on the Viking Freya. You're going to be cabin 200 on the Viking Njord. Everything will feel just the same. Your suitcases will be waiting for you in the cabin, and in the evening, you have a beautiful cocktail. Meet your new crew, which will be just as excited to have you on board, and you continue your sailing. So
It's hassle-free. Again, that's almost like the phrase of the day today. Something that can be challenging and sounds difficult. Viking's been intentional with your ship design, intentional with your itinerary planning, to be able to make something that can be a challenge be almost an unknown, right? I mean, yes, there are some changes. We love the idea of river cruising, unpack once and then just
yeah.
take me where I need to go. But sometimes these high and low water issues do arise. I loved the stat you said. 4% of all
Mhm.
river departures are actually impacted by the higher the low water situation. So it's rare. I would say under 5% is pretty rare. But if it does happen to you, it's significant. I love that you've dispelled the rumor or the concern that it's going to derail my entire trip and turn my cruise into a motor coach tour. It will not do that. It'll extend one of your days. You will have to pack and unpack again, but knowing that you are going to be not dramatically or negatively impacted significantly, I think is a really good point as people talk and think about what are some of the potential challenges, because every trip has challenges.
Of course.
That really is a mitigated issue. And speaking of challenges, and I'm thinking of, mobility. If I'm someone that has some mobility challenges, maybe walk me through if I'm in a wheelchair, a walker, or a cane, or maybe it takes me a little longer to climb a few stairs or to walk. What's the river experience going to be like for all of those mobility variances?
Thank you for asking that question. I think that's a great question to discuss. We have to keep in mind, we're traveling into an area of the world that doesn't necessarily have these ADA recommendations or regulations as we have them here in the United States, that starts with the lower sinks in public bathrooms. You will face cobblestone all over Europe, regardless. These old towns are pre-medieval, medieval, and that's just the way it is. Now, it doesn't mean that it can't be done. We do have certain excursions that are slow walking groups, right? Somebody who needs a little bit more time absolutely will see the highlights only, maybe do some touring on a motor coach more so, more breaks. We have tours for that. Now, if somebody is 100% wheelchair bound, I would definitely not recommend a Viking cruise or a river cruise for that matter. The facilities on board are just not there, right? You do have elevators, but it's tight turns. These ships are not providing the space that you would need to comfortably move around, even in the cabins, even excuse me, even in the larger cabins, you would not be able to do that. So as long as you are a slow walker with a cane, even with a walker, I've seen people, it's not ideal. As long as you can walk the gangway, as long as you can get on the motor coach, yes, yes. But you have to be understanding, you have to maybe walk at your own pace. That is possible. It is absolutely possible. A Somebody in a wheelchair will not have the same experience that somebody able-bodied. That's just not the case.
Yeah, thank you for being candid. I think it's important to share what is going to be the best experience. But because you are right, there are places that in the world that the cobblestone streets, the uneven walkways, you have to be able to at least anticipate that. But the onboard experience for someone that might be, it takes me a little bit longer. I have a cane. I need a little bit of assistance. Still not a problem with that
No,
on
it's not.
ship. And
Yeah.
if it takes you a little bit longer, there are designated excursions for a slower pace if one or both of your people in your traveling party would just rather be a little bit slower, take your time. You guys have been thoughtful about how you design and execute your excursions. Some of the other ancillary parts of the trip we've talked, and you touched on it a little bit, the pre and post experience and the transfers and all that. But now, come on, the worst part about travel is air. Can Viking help me a little bit with my air? Can I make this somewhat hassle free? I know you don't have your own airplanes. You don't have your own aircraft that you own and fly yourself, but talk to me about your air program.
Don't challenge justice. Yes, no, this is definitely a big challenge. This is the one part of the vacation, of the booking, that is hard for us to control. We do work very closely with renowned air partners, and they do their best. Of course, Viking is one of the largest sellers in the travel buyers in the travel industry of air uh, bookings, if you will. So we definitely have a great air program. We have a designated air department. Excuse me, air department with an emergency number if somebody is overseas that you can call 24/7. Um, what we do is we always provide a phenomenal value, back to the value proposition earlier. Um, that you can find round trip air on those longer trips. Let's just pick one, the Grand European Tour, up to free air. That is coach air, but you can upgrade. When you buy into the Viking Air, that is a program where you have an extra charge, where you exempt, for example, want to use points that you might have, or you have specific um, wishes on when to sail, when to fly, which carrier, what side of the plane you want to sit on, and all of those kind of things. And like I said, upgrades, deviate, spend some time in a different location, a different city. Stopovers if you want to see family in London and then continue to. All of that is possible. For that, I would recommend talking to your advisor to about Viking Air, which allows you then to do these customizations. So there is a great value, and we actually received great ratings on our air. Is it always perfect? I'll be honest, it's not, right? In a perfect world, like people
Mhm.
always say, but we have a fantastic team that is designated, that is really remarkable. The ratings go up over the years. We're getting better and better. So I'm very proud how far we have come with our air. air department. And you know what's nice is it again adds to the hassle-free approach that we talked about so much today. You book your air with Viking, your transfers are included. We even have the ambassador program in place now, where in these big ports, such as where a lot of our guests connect through, and that is Paris, that is Amsterdam, that is Frankfurt, London, where we have ambassadors at the gate, not just where you get your suitcases, at the gate where you stop over to guide you in the right direction. Let's say you get into gate 16G in Paris. There will be a Viking representative point you in the right direction, even walk you over to your new gate. They know you're coming with this flight. So this adds a lot of confidence. It's like, oh my gosh, they're already here. And then it translates down into the destination where your Viking crew will wait at the after you picked up your suitcases and guide you to your transfers, help you with the luggage and all these kind of things. It's seamless. It's kind of transitions from the moment you step onto that plane and fly overseas or wherever you join your Viking cruise. It's seamless all the way into the destination and then back home as well, right?
All right, so I want to go. Do I need to book early? Do you have stuff this? I mean, it's probably too late this summer, right? I mean, in truth, river cruising books up pretty early, does it not?
It does, and the reason for that is, there's only so many cabins that we have,
Right.
right? And guests have learned that booking early is always the great way to do it. You're simply looking at more inventory. You're looking at more cabin availability and those kind of things. The longer you wait, the slimmer the pickings. It's just
That's right.
the
Well,
plan
and
that.
when you talked about pre and post, your hotel options, you talked about air, that there's only so many air seats. So it really does that inventory piece trickles down not just to the river cruise experience, but your pre or post and your air. It sounds like a sales pitch. I don't love that saying, oh, you got to book early. But it
Yeah.
really is because of the popularity and the scarcity of inventory, it becomes something. If you want options and you want to maximize the value, book as early as possible. You'll have to compromise maybe some of those things on the price of the air ticket or the seat location, or maybe even the itinerary selection of the river cruise. The longer you wait, the more challenging that can become. But so it's not a sales pitch. It's really more of if you want to keep your options as broad as possible. So Viking river cruising, you really can do it all, and it can be hassle free. I love how you've positioned the river cruise experience today, Reiner. Thanks for jumping on and chatting with me. I know we could talk about this all day, so thanks for taking some time.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, Ryan.